Welcome to the Glenn Mercer Show, where we talk all things vegan. If you're not already vegan, no worries, we'll get you there. If you are, tune in for health advice, information on climate change, and all the damage done by our most destructive industry, animal agriculture. We'll also talk cooking, theater, film, and culture. My 2 reasons for starting this podcast: to entertain, to inform, and to make people vegan. Oh, that's 3. Shit. Hello and welcome to the Glenn Mercer Show. Today we have my special guest, Geoff Palmer, returning. Geoff is a 38-year vegan. He is a national bodybuilding, natural bodybuilding and natural physique master champion. I was the runner-up. And in addition to that, Geoff is the founder and CEO of Clean Machine Nutrition, cleanmachineonline.com. Geoff, welcome back.
Good to see you, my friend, as always.
And our topic today is, quote, toxic masculinity, unquote. So what does that mean, toxic masculinity?
Well, I honestly don't like that term. Even though we are experiencing some toxic masculinity, I don't want to infer that masculinity in any way is toxic, only that it's become toxic in the way people have perceived it. I think masculinity in its truest sense is a really good thing. It's using strength to defend the innocent and those in need. It's providing for others who would depend on us and who we care about and love. I mean, protecting, providing, being a good person to continue on the species. All of those things are important. Those are beautiful aspects of masculinity, but we've turned them into something different. We've bastardized masculinity to the point where marketing companies have taken over and used fear marketing campaigns against men. And men have adopted this screwy, bastardized version of masculinity through marketing efforts of companies trying to get them to purchase more of their products. Eat more meat, that'll make you masculine. Well, that's a lie. It's a lie that's killing men, and it's destroying and distorting their views of masculinity. And I'd like to set the record straight.
So let me see if I understand. Eating meat is not what makes you masculine. Is that correct?
No, that was a very, very successful advertising campaign from the beef industry.
So I could be masculine on tempeh and tofu.
100%.
All right. So tell us about these marketing campaigns, when they got started and how destructive they've been.
Yeah, so way back in prior to World War II, the vast majority of the entire global population was getting 60 to 80% of their calories from plants. Now in America, it's about 30%. What happened? Well, what happened is companies started to rise and realize they could make money off of people if they could convince them that they needed to eat more of their products. It's a sales technique. It's a marketing campaign. But people started to believe that as real, as fact. And so much so, they were so successful at gaining men's fear that if I don't eat meat, I won't be masculine. If I don't drink milk, I won't have strong bones. This is marketing techniques. You fell for it. We all fell for it. We were duped. We were lied to try to get us to buy more of their products.
Now, when you say you fell for it, you're not talking to me, right? You're talking to some people who are listening. I
Well,
guess.
I think we all fell for it to some degree, unless we were born vegan. And thank you for all the parents out there who started their children out the right way.
Yes. So when they try to convince people that eating meat makes them more masculine, and the reality is that eating meat just makes them fatter, is there anything masculine about being obese?
Okay, so this is I've distilled it down to some really basic principles. So some basic roles of masculinity. Number one, be a good provider, right? Because that's for the survival of not only yourself, but your family members. Number two, be a good protector. Well, if you got to be a good protector, you got to be strong, right?
Mhm.
So that you can protect your family against tigers or, whatever is attacking you, other tribes, other males. Number three, you need to be virile, obviously, so that you can procreate, so carry on the species line. And no offense to anybody else who's interested in a partner that is of the same gender. What I'm talking about is actual procreation. And last is, of course, reproduction. So you need the virility to be able to do the procreation, and then of course you need to have a good delivery of sperm and carry on the lineage. So those are the big things: be a good provider, good protector, virility, and reproduction. Now, what that has turned into is meat equals protein. Protein equals muscle. Muscle equals strength. And strength equals masculine. And that's the line that people follow in their mind. Many men were programmed that you only get protein from meat. We now know that's false. It's not only not true, the opposite is true.
Right.
Plants are the only things that actually create essential amino acids that make our proteins, including muscle. So protein actually originates in plants or in some microbes. Animals don't make essential amino acids. They can't. It's impossible. So none of it comes from there. And then the protein equals muscle. This much is true. So every falsehood that is sold in a marketing term has to have some truth in it for people to say, wait a minute, that's true. You do need protein in order to build muscle. That's absolutely true. So you splice the truth in there with falsehoods that meat equals protein. Well, yes, meat does have protein in it, but that's not where it comes from. It's not its origination. And that muscle does equal strength, 100%, and that strength can be a masculine trait. Okay, so it's the foundational principle that meat equals protein that was wrong. All the rest of it they created was right. So it sounded true, it sounded right, so the rest of it must be right, right?
Right.
That's how successful marketing campaigns work. They mix the truth with the falsehoods just enough to get you to eat more meat.
And they leave the suggestion that if protein is good, more must be better.
When
but
actually,
in reality,
yes,
protein is something that has an upper limit, doesn't it?
it absolutely does. One, you can't use more than the body needs. And two, when you are doing consuming protein, it stimulates growth of cells. Now, if you're working out, that's a pretty important thing. If you're not working out, like most of America who's sedentary, too much growth is not a good thing. So what happens when you tell a cell to grow, 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 and it's saying, no, 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 I have no purpose? You turn that gene on that says, okay, you're telling me to grow? I'll grow. And it starts to grow out of control. We call that a cancer cell.
Right.
Do you see how eating too much meat or any of the things like in meat, like methionine? Now, methionine is an amino acid, essential amino acid, so we need some of it. It helps us grow and reproduce new cells. That's important. But what happens if you get too much methionine or a high level of methionine like you'd find in consuming meat 3 or 4 times a day? Well, we now know that cancer cells actually feed on methionine. So much so, there are about 14 cancers: breast cancer, prostate cancer, lung cancer, skin cancers, pancreatic cancers, one of the major killers of cancers of society are now called methionine dependent cancers. Just Google that. It may save your life, because you can see that you can take these cancers, put them in a petri dish, and remove all the methionine, 100% of them will die. We even use this in the research circles to restrict. It's called a cancer methionine restriction diet.
That's right.
So, here we are consuming a lot of something that would be good on a small level, bad on a big level. And we're eating way too much protein, much more than we need. We're sedentary, so we're not actually using that stimulation. And because of that, we're overstimulating cells to the point of creating cancer cells. And then on top of that, feeding them for rapid growth, so we don't have a chance of killing them in time before they kill us. And that's why cancer has now become the #2 killer of Americans, behind atherosclerosis in this country. It's so sad that we know the physiology, we know what causes it, and we're not changing. And we're not changing because men are scared to death that they're going to be, called weak or wuss or whatever by not eating meat. Look, 77% of our population is overweight or obese. That's not masculine.
Right. Now, it's interesting that you say that the marketing technique was to use fear.
Yes.
To convince men to eat their products to become strong and masculine using fear. Now, I would think that the masculine thing is not to go through your life in fear.
Yes.
So there's something kind of self-contradictory about this whole process, isn't there?
Absolutely. One of the supposed admirable traits of masculinity is bravery.
Yeah.
To stand up against the wind, against the common, chorus, and say, I stand my ground. I stand with the truth. That's masculine, right? You see, what's his name? The Irish guy that fought and had a small army, or 300, right? 300 Spartans standing up against the entire army of tens of thousands. That's bravery, But if you're basing your food choices on, they're going to call me weak if I throw a vegan hot dog on the barbecue instead of it's like, really? That's what you're afraid of? You're afraid of food? You're afraid of being judged by your peers? That's weak. That's not masculine.
Right. Now, I never considered it bravery, but when I became a vegetarian at 17, I didn't care what people thought. I felt like I just didn't get the gene for caring what other people think. All my life, I've never cared what anybody thinks. Sometimes maybe it's gotten me in trouble, but I don't think it's accurate to call that bravery on my part. I just never understood why anybody cares that much what other people think. Do you have any insights into that? And did you go through life not caring what other people think?
Well, I cared a lot, actually. I care about what they feel and what they think. And that was hard for me. That was a hard transition because, look, back when I became vegan in 1985, you know how many vegans were around in 1985.
Yeah, I think I became vegan more in like 92.
Right.
Yeah.
So in 85, I was actually the only vegan I knew, maybe one or two other vegans, period. And so everybody was attacking me for my values, for my principles, for my choices, questioning, dogging me, telling me it's wrong. And I'm like, no, I know in my heart of hearts, I'm going to stand with my truth. To stand against 99.9% of the population of the country, that took some bravery. And to stay with it. So many people will do it. They'll get flack from co-workers or get flack from their family members, and that's it. I can't take this. I'll go back to doing what everybody else. Be a good little sheeple and follow along with everybody else, and that's safe and comfortable, and nobody will point me out or ostracize me from the group. And I'm like, no, somebody's going to stand up for the truth because this is right and this could help people. And when
Jeff, I wish I knew you in 1985 because you might have convinced me to go vegan 7 years earlier. Um, yeah, I mean, I just, for the most part, when I became a vegetarian, I just wasn't concerned with what other people were eating. And I wasn't concerned with what their opinions were of what I was eating. But of course, as I've gotten older, I've become very concerned with what other people are eating. And I've tried to improve my own diet. Let's get back to toxic masculinity. Did you feel that you imbibed any of that growing up?
I didn't because of my upbringing. My parents valued ethics, valued connection, valued cooperation and collaboration, not competition. So I grew up with a whole different set of values. And as I grew up, I found most of my peers, though, were heavily into competitive mind states, into power over others. So there is two ways to really experience power: power over another person or another animal or another thing, and then power with. When you combine your power with somebody and helping them, you both grow. When you aim your power at someone else or something else, one loses. It's called a zero-sum thinking. In game theory, zero-sum is that 1 plus and 1 minus equals 0. So you actually both end up losing in a way. It's a win-lose situation, but technically, because one's a loser and is probably going to get angry at you and probably hold that against you, you end up losing because then you can't cooperate with the person that you just beat. So they may have something that you need in the future, and tough luck. You just created a negative there. With the win-win, I win, you win. Now you're stronger together. That's a strength. That's a power. And I think most men have adopted a weaker of the two game theories, which is zero-sum thinking, which is I beat you, I win. Yay, I win, right? Yeah, that's the most common thinking for males, that you have to have power over something. It's power over whites having power over blacks. That's what led to slavery and racism. Males having power over women. That's what led to sexism and abuses, rapes of women. Power over animals. This is what led us to the objectification of animals, that we could just use them and toss them aside and not respect their life at all. This is power over mindset. That's not masculine. Real masculinity finds the power with. Everything in the universe finds a way to cooperate with its surrounding, except humans. We want to dominate our surrounding, right? We want to control it. And that's not the best outcome. And I'm really surprised that human beings haven't evolved to see that clear understanding that collaboration and cooperation is so much more effective and better for even the person doing it than competition and creating a win-lose situation.
Now, do you feel that collaboration and cooperation is more ingrained in the image of femininity than masculinity?
Totally, but it does not need to be exclusive to women. Guys can collaborate. Guys can think that way too. Sure. It's training. It's social conditioning. You can uncondition yourself. You can untrain yourself from the way they want you to behave. Look, most of the corporations, most of the governments like it when you behave like everybody else, because then you're predictable. They know they push this button, they'll get you to react that way. It's easier for governments and businesses to control your buying habits or your voting choices if they know what you can do. If you stand up for collaboration and cooperation, that doesn't fit their model. Now, there are good progressive businesses that really model around cooperation and collaboration. And they're excelling right now because they're not trying to beat everybody else and everybody else beat them. They're actually finding partners to grow even faster with. So while those are taking a beating, getting in the fight, trying to fight against something and losing some of their, benefits and some of their sales, other people are collaborating and multiplying their sales, multiplying the benefits around them. This is how we can change. And it takes a strong man to shift to this mindset, to shift to this way, because it's not the norm. Stepping outside of the norm, I think, is one of the bravest and most masculine things you can do. By staying with the truth, you are armed with that shield of honesty, that shield of integrity. That's not stoppable. And that you can use to help others. That's the power of masculinity, and really helping others, lifting your brother and your sisters up, not trying to beat them down so that you stand on their backs. It's such a different mindset, and we use it against marginalized people, people of different races, people of different colors, people of different nationalities, people of different religions, and animals too, and even our environment. We're set to try to beat down the environment and change it to our ways. It doesn't have to be this way. And I think the true masculine self is just beginning to start to rise up, that really includes a cooperation with animals, a respect and reverence for life, a respect for our own life by not putting junk into our bodies, a respect for the life that comes to us from the plants, and just feeling that empower. And it grows you, it makes you stronger, it makes you healthier. Why would you not want that outcome?
So the vegan movement is then consistent with a movement towards a new kind of masculinity.
Totally. I mean, what is masculine, right? You protect the innocent. What are the symbols of masculinity? An army person, right? Someone in the military. What do? Defend and protect, right? Not always, but that's the goal. Same with police officers or firemen. What do? Serve and protect, right? Protect you from a house burning, protect you from somebody who's trying to kill you. This protecting the innocent, protecting those who can't protect themselves. Well, protecting the animals, 80 billion of them are getting killed every year. There's nothing more protective you could do, which is change your own diet so you protect the innocent. That is as masculine as it gets.
Right. So those meat eaters, I don't want to say that they're not masculine, but they're making a mistake.
They're missing out on an opportunity to embrace masculine in a way that will help them experience masculinity in a powerful, powerful way, not in a weak way of trying to dominate over something. You're in a relationship with a woman, dominating her. How well does that work for you, right?
I hope you're not asking me that question. That was rhetorical.
Yes, absolutely. But no, of course, you cooperate, you collaborate with a spouse. That's a healthy relationship.
Right.
That we just need to extend further into all the rest of the things we do, but we've been trained. Look, a survey found that 1,000 people taken on Australian men, they found that 73% of men would rather reduce their own life by 10 years than stop eating meat. That's how brainwashed we've become.
Wow. That is just extraordinary.
They would die, literally die, to defend their fear of changing their diet because they're afraid of being ostracized by their peers. That's
it's so hard for me to understand because most people I know love their families. And it just makes no sense to me that you don't care about your own health and your own longevity because it's so important to eat dead animals, which, by the way, I don't think even tastes good based on memory. I mean, I remember now what it was like when I ate meat as a kid, and it was this fatty, gristly substance. I mean, nobody would like boil a hamburger and eat it. They have to put it between plant substances, bread, lettuce, tomato, onion, to enhance the flavor, and put plant-based sauces on it and so forth. And then they get their fattiness from eating the meat with the actual taste hidden by the plants.
And this is another one of the marketing campaigns. Okay, so our biology has three hardwired mechanisms in it for survival: fat, salt, and sugar. Okay, let's talk sugar. Why are we attracted to sugar? Well, because our brain uses about 25% of all of the glucose that we intake an entire day. Our brain, the average male brain, uses 80 milligrams of glucose per second, per minute, I'm sorry.
Per minute.
So, yeah, per minute. So when in a day, you're talking about 115,000 milligrams of glucose used by your brain. That's the function. As a matter of fact, there's almost no glucose in animal products. So by going on this keto diet, you're starving the brain of its number one primary resource and can actually damage the brain based on more recent research. Okay, so that's sugar. That's why we crave sugar. And then fat. Why fat? Well, fat has almost 2.5 times the amount of calories of carbs and protein. So our body wants calories because calories will keep us alive, right? It's the energy resource. And then salt. Salt is required for our entire nervous system. It's called the sodium ion chain, and that's how nerves move. The ions change and the nerve signal flows. So our whole nervous system, even our heart, depends on sodium. If we get too low on sodium, we can have a heart attack or a stroke. So our body is predispositioned to want to make sure we get enough sugar, salt, and fats because of the calories. Now, the food industry figured this out and said, hey, wait, if we're hardwired to want these, let's start pumping our foods full of white sugar, isolated fats, and salt. And of course, that's created a 77% obesity rate. I mean,
Right.
Overweight and obesity rate in the United States. So once again, the food industry has co-opted our own natural physiology to find out what our natural impulses are for survival, and then bastardize them to sell more of their product, put more of the things in there that our body naturally has an urge to try to get for survival. But we wanted healthy fats, not isolated oils. We wanted glucose coming from carbohydrates, complex carbohydrates and starchy foods from plants, not isolated cane sugar. And we don't need that much sodium. The sodium in plants is far enough that we need, but it enhances our flavor system. So they're using it in everything. And sodium, as we know, leads to hypertension, the number one disease state in the world. So we're consuming way too much of all of these isolates, salt, sugar, and oil, and they don't need to be. But again, this is a marketing tool by the food companies to get you to eat and consume and like more of their products. It's created a bunch of food addicts.
Let's take a quick break and we'll come back and learn how not to be a food addict. We'll be right back.
All right, if you've ever wanted to show off your plant-based lifestyle and do it in style, here's your chance. We have some of the most amazing t-shirts, hats, accessories, coffee mugs, and more at shop.realmeneatplants.com. We have statement t-shirts that will bring a smile to everyone's face. I love the I want tofu tonight tee. Plus, we have podcast tees, Real Women Eat Plants gear, Real Kids Eat Plants, and Real People Eat Plants, just in case men, women, and kids didn't cover it all. Yeah, we love you and love that you want to show off that healthy lifestyle of yours. Again, check out our high-quality gear at shop.realmeneatplants.com and enjoy.
Okay, Geoff, we were talking about how marketing companies create food addicts of our population. what's the best strategy to avoid becoming a food addict?
Yes. Well, understand why your body works the way it is. Understand what the difference is between marketing for food companies and real whole food plant nutrition. It's really simple. Every animal on this planet eats whole food plant nutrition, or for the carnivorous animals, even they eat whole, raw, immediate foods. So that's the best way to eat, is clear. And for humans, we are herbivores, so we should be eating the plants. It's pretty clear. Our digestive tract is set up that way. What does our microbiome feed on? Well, it feeds on fiber, polyphenols, oligosaccharides, all found in plants. There's no fiber or polyphenols in any animal food, none. Well, if 70% of our digestion and many of our hormones and many other processes depend on our microbiome, and they all feed on fiber and polyphenols, well, what should we be putting in here? It's pretty clear. We're not just feeding our bodies, we got to feed our gut. Otherwise, we don't feed our bodies. When you put meat in, it creates a bile environment. Our body, our liver can create bile to help break down that food because it doesn't have any enzymes in it, right? Like the plants do. The plants put the enzymes in there for us, and our microbiome is already built to digest plants. So that part's easy. It's the bile then. And then when bile is created in the microbiome, in the gut, that is when gram-negative bacteria, they thrive in bile. Our good bacteria die in bile. So every time you're eating meat, you're reducing your good bacteria and creating more bad or pathogenic bacteria. And then when you break down that protein, it releases enzymes called cadaverines and putrescines. Putrescine gets its name from that putrid smell when you smell an animal rotting on the side of the road. That's putrescines. That's why they call it putrescines, because they smell putrid. And cadaverines, why do they call it cadaverines? Because they
doesn't sound good.
They found them in cadavers. It's the microbes that actually break down a dead human body. Well, why would you want to be a living body and creating cadaverines in your body that could break down and kill and destroy your own cells? Both cadaverines and putrescines created by eating meat are carcinogenic. They can form cancers, they can accelerate the growth of cancers, and they can end up killing us. So it's really clear. You put meat in, it disrupts our microbiome, it reduces the good guys and raises the bad guys, it causes cancer agents, and then can kill us. On the other hand, when you eat plants, it feeds our microbiome, grows the population of the good guys, gives us all our nutrition. I mean, it couldn't be more clear what we should be eating.
Now, Geoff, are there any keto advocates and companies selling cadaverine as a supplement?
It's interesting. Ketones are an emergency backup system for the body.
Right.
If we're starving to death, or if we're poisoned, or if we're damaged and we need a lot more energy than our body can produce quickly, our body can make ketones. Ketones are a backup supply. Now, the problem is that our heart and our brain feed almost exclusively on glucose for creating ATP. And ketones are a lot less successful at doing that. As a backup, like a spare tire, if you want to put the donut on the car, okay, that's fine. It'll get you to a gas station, but that's what it's for. It's not, hey, let's put donuts on all four of our tires and drive around for 100,000 miles. No, that's insane. So they found that what happens then if your heart isn't as efficient at producing it, if you're only getting ketones to your heart, well, what happens is the heart cells actually start dying. And the heart cells start to say, hey, wait a minute, because we have so little energy, we're not going to just kill the cell because we don't have enough energy to feed the cells of our heart. We're going to replace that cell with scar tissue, because scar tissue doesn't take any energy. So you actually start permanently scarifying the heart when you convert to ketones, but only long term. Short term, probably okay. That's what our backup system is for. Temporary use. Break glass, temporary use. right? Backup emergency. If you get sick, if you get poisoned, you're going to need a little extra energy. No problem. We'll create some ketones to support that. Not as a regular fuel source. It can damage both the heart and the brain, and seriously, actually even cause the reduction in muscle tissue. I hear people using keto diets for CrossFit and stuff like this. Study after study has shown they actually do lose more fat, but they also lose more muscle. And then what does that mean? If you lower the muscle, when you gain the fat back, now you've just worsened your ratio of muscle to fat. You've made the whole situation worse. That's not masculine.
Now, Geoff, we've talked about the relationship between toxic masculinity and the culture and the American diet. Do you see a relationship, too, between toxic masculinity and our medical system and its approach to disease and treatment?
Yeah, so the allopathic medicine approach is to treat the problem, not prevent the problem. And definitely prevention is far more successful because you don't get it ever again if you can change the lifestyle. So lifestyle medicine is really the way to go. Allopathic medicine is another way for doctors and pharmaceutical companies and hospitals and insurance companies all to make a killing off you. And they're doing it very, very successfully. Insurance companies are some of the wealthiest companies in the world. Pharmaceutical companies are the #1 most wealthy group of corporations. They overtook oil companies, believe it or not, wow, in the world, especially during COVID. So, we're depending on these as a fallacy. They're only treating, they're not curing. Here we have phytic acid, which is in plants. Phytic acid actually can go into cancer cells and switch off the oncogene and turn it back into a healthy cell. How many drugs on the market? We spend $1 trillion globally a year on cancer research. How many ways have we cured cancer? 0. So we're spending $1 trillion on research, cutting up all kinds of animals and dissecting creatures and stuff like that, spending millions of taxpayer dollars on research, billions of tax dollars on cancer research, and beans can reverse that cancer, something that no drug ever created has been able to do. And it's in the plants already. It's so simple. Stop depending on this false advice that is just making them rich and you sick. It's not you, I mean the general you, not you.
But, it seems to me that the approach of trying to kill the cancer cells,
yes,
with the chemo drugs, with the radiation, is that masculine kind of approach of there's an enemy and we kill it. Instead of that cooperative approach of there's a body, let's work with this body and improve this body and improve nutrition and a more holistic approach. Do you see the masculinity in that approach of fighting cancer as if it's a war?
Yeah, totally. And they do the same thing with bacteria. Obviously there are negative bacteria, but there's also very good bacteria, like in our own microbiome in our gut. When you have a bad bacteria in the gut, our body tends to want to just try to flush it out through diarrhea, just wash it out, right? And that would be a good approach. Sometimes it's a little more aggressive though. But instead of trying to support your gut by eating more plants and fiber and polyphenols, these prebiotics that would raise up your good guys to take out the bad guys, instead, what we do, we drop an antibiotic down there and kill everyone, the good guys and the bad guys. Right. It's like, okay, there's a party and one of the guys is a murderer in the room. Okay, let's throw a grenade in the room and kill everybody. What? No one would do that. But that's exactly what we're doing to our own bodies, is kill them all. That's that toxic masculine mindset that really needs to change. Right. Instead of supporting the good guys, that's good masculinity, right? We support and help the good guys so that become stronger, more powerful, and the negatives subside.
Right. And of course, you're not saying that there's no role for antibiotics, but just that they're overused.
Totally. That we're going to that as a first line of defense instead of a last line of defense when other things fail. That's the appropriate way it should be used if you're going to use them at all.
Now, if you do need to use antibiotics, what's your opinion of the best way to gain the probiotics?
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, there are some probiotics, but to be honest, the body. Okay, so the body will store its lineup of probiotics in its system in the pancreas, and then so if you need to flush out the intestinal tract, well, then it'll do so, and then it'll repopulate the microbiota in there. Now, over time, this can get weakened, and if you're not eating good plants with polyphenols and prebiotics and oligosaccharides and all the good things that our bacteria eat, they can drop down, and you have a bad mix. Those are eating a lot of high fiber diet, a lot of plants rich in phytonutrients, and these things that feed the probiotics. They actually have higher what's called diversity, which means there's more different kinds that do lots of other cool functions. Some will help in metabolism, some will help produce tryptophan, convert tryptophan to serotonin, some will do this, lots of different functionalities. We have about 40,000 different types of microbes, yeast, mold, and even viruses. We call it a virome now because they're beneficial viruses that live in our gut. They actually kill bad bacteria. So we actually have a good symbiotic relationship with viruses, with yeast, with molds, with fungi, with microbes and bacteria in our gut. But you got to be careful to feed the good guys, not the bad guys.
Well, do you feed the good guys by taking probiotics or just by eating healthy plant foods? Do you believe in probiotic supplementation?
I think there is a place for it if it's a specific probiotic. To be honest, with 40,000 different bacteria that inhabit our gut, taking a probiotic with 7 in them, probably not going to cover the bases. 40,000, 7, not the same number. So but I think there is a place for certain specific bacteria. Like there's a bacteria that eats oxalates, right? There's oxalates in our food, like spinach. So they did a study and said, okay, well, if you eat spinach, you're actually feeding these bacteria. They're called oxalobacter, oxalate eating bacteria. Good name for them. Yeah. So they eat the oxalates and they allow the nutrition of the spinach to be going in. So those consuming a lot of spinach will have a lot of oxalobacter bacteria in them. So the scientists said, well, wait a minute, what if we stop feeding people anything with any oxalates, any plant foods, right? And well, after a while, after 6 months, they introduced spinach back to them and the people started vomiting and doubling over in pain. And they're like, oh, see, people shouldn't be eating oxalates. No, just the opposite. We should be eating regularly so that you don't get those kind of symptoms. Because what you did is you just starved out all of your oxalate-eating bacteria because you weren't feeding them. It's so simple. You stop feeding them the healthy plant foods, they go away. And then they can't be there to protect you when you do need them.
Now, does that mean that if somebody hasn't been eating their fruits and vegetables and they hear you talk and they say, you know what, Geoff's right, I should start eating more fruits and vegetables, should they do it slowly because their gut may not be ready for it? What's the best approach?
Depends on the person. Find out for yourself. Everybody is different. Everybody is unique in that way. And depends on how much other forms of fruit and vegetables. Are you eating a lot of whole food, or are you eating a lot of processed food? Okay, if you're switching to a whole food diet, that could be a significant increase. Like I consume 100 to 150 grams of fiber a day. Most Americans are getting 10 to 15 grams. So I'm doing about 10 times as much fiber a day, but my body's used to it. I go 2 to 3 times a day. I pass solids 2 to 3 times a day. I had a woman who came in, she was on the Atkins diet, and she said, yeah, I haven't had a poop in over 2 weeks. I'm like, what? Oh my God. That's frightening. Do you know how toxic that is for the human body not to pass waste solids?
Yeah.
Can you imagine if you let your garbage pile up in your kitchen for 2 weeks, what that would smell like? Oh my God.
Are there other dimensions of toxic masculinity besides diet that you want to discuss?
Yeah, so about polls were taken in the United States and a couple of different places around the globe, and they found that in America, about 80% of vegans are women.
80% of vegans are women in the U.S.
Yes. So you and I are even a smaller minority than you thought.
Wow. What is wrong with our sex?
Yes, we have a gender problem that they are resistant out of fear, and it's sad because it's killing them. Let's jump into a little bit of this. All right. So there's like the dairy industry. Dairy industry created a marketing fear. They saw soy milk taking over their sales, right? They were like, we're losing sales to soy milk. Let's figure out how to make soy milk bad. Let's scare them in, not to think of it. So they identified, oh, wait a minute, soy has phytoestrogens in it, right?
Yeah.
And that's going to scare men because it's going to make them feminine. They're going to grow breasts, right? Can you imagine if soy actually helped people grow breasts? Women would be drinking gallons of it a day. Yeah. It doesn't. But it was a clever marketing ploy to feed that. And it's funny. Soy has phytoestrogens, which are about 100 times weaker than actual estrogens found in milk. So they were telling people to drink the milk, but be afraid of the phytoestrogens, which are 100 times weaker than what you're drinking in the soy milk because it's real cow's milk. I'm like, wow. And then they're like, oh, but eat the eggs too. Wait, do you realize eggs are ovaries, right? They're made from estrogen. Are you kidding me? And I'm just like, but yes, you'll see a guy, 3 raw eggs in a glass of milk, loaded with estrogen, but they won't do the soy. Like, guys, you got this so backwards. That's how far we've come in believing the myth. I call it the meat masculinity myth. It is a myth that you've been sold on. Look, it's not your fault. But you don't have to take it anymore. You don't have to kill yourself. You don't have to suffer these disease states just because you're afraid of going against the status quo.
Right. The estrogen thing is that linguistic approach to nutrition. Like they say, humans have canine teeth. So because we have canine teeth, we should eat meat. And that one always struck me as just the silliest argument of all time. If you just compare your so-called canine tooth against a tiger's canine tooth, they shouldn't be using the same word. That's all I can say. We have glorified molars.
But like eggs full of estrogen, there's a great study from, it's called Egg, Red Meat, Poultry Intake and the Risk of Lethal Prostate Cancer in Prostate-Specific Antigen Area, the incidence of survival. So they did a study and they looked at men who consumed 2.5 eggs per week had an 81% increased risk of lethal prostate cancer, not just developing prostate cancer, but dying from prostate cancer. When I tell guys this, they're like, oh, it's all right. I'll just have my prostate removed. So the study is
that's macho, isn't it?
Yes, just get my body parts chopped off.
Yeah,
that's real.
I don't
really
need them.
Masculine. Now you're a little less masculine, but that's all right. As a matter of fact, it's a lot less masculine. After prostate surgery, impotence rate amongst men with prostate surgery was 66 to 75%. 75% of men were impotent, could not perform sexually at all after having their prostate removed. How masculine is that?
Yeah.
And you're going to give up your ability to have sex for 2 eggs a week. I'm really not seeing the good trade-off here. Guys, really, they're convincing you to eat more of their products and make you lose your ability to sexually perform for the sale of their eggs. You really want to fall for that crap? I don't get it. I really don't get it. And this is science that's been repeated over and over again in studies. It's not arguable anymore at this time. And guys are dying. They're having their masculinity stolen from them. I mean, let's look at this. Look at this study that meat has increased rapidly in the last since the 1960s. The consumption of meat, especially in the United States. Fertility in the United States from 1973 has dropped by 52%. So guys eating more meat have dropped their own sperm count in half.
And you think it's from the meat?
Oh, it's clear it's from the meat. Here's the next study. So they did a study on, it's called The Impact of a Vegan Diet on Sperm Quality and Sperm Oxidative Stress Values. So they compared vegans, which was really cool that they actually included vegans, and non-vegan meat or meat-eating meat. So vegans had 188% higher sperm count than men eating meat. There's your 50%.
Long term, that could allow us to catch up in the population.
Yes.
But when I say long term, I don't know if we have that longer term.
Almost 2 times as much sperm in vegan men than vegan men. Now, even the motility, the strength of the sperm, right? You want to have a big, strong sperm, right? Yeah. They can reach the egg, they can penetrate the egg and create a newborn. Yeah, 17 times higher motility rate of vegans in vegan.
17 times higher. Wow.
Yeah,
so we really should be multiplying more.
Yes. Now, the sad part of this study is that eating meat causes oxidative damage. We know this. It's widely established in the medical journals. And eating plants reduces oxidative stress on the body because it's full of antioxidants, right? So this makes sense. But sperm are really specifically susceptible to oxidative damage. So they looked at that and they found the sperm DNA damage was significantly higher in meat eaters than vegans. So the DNA damage, that means you have a much higher risk of having a birth defect in your child by eating meat. Now, this really breaks my heart, knowing that a family trying to bring in a loving child to the world just because of their food choices could bring a DNA damaged, unhealthy baby into this world. That's heartbreaking. I don't wish that on anyone. And it's sad that we're not facing this knowledge. We're not accepting this. We're sitting in denial. So many men are sitting in denial that really you're going to let the marketing agencies, the food companies, the doctors, and the pharmaceutical companies talk you into giving up all of this, your ability to have sex, your ability to produce a healthy child. I mean, why? It does not make any sense.
Now, do you have a phrase, Geoff, for the kind of masculinity that should replace toxic masculinity?
Yes. It can be a reverence for life. When you have a reverence for life, you will not do things that intentionally harm yourself, because a good man will be here for their spouse and for their children. If you're not healthy, you're not being masculine, because you're not being there for your wife and kids, or your partner and your kids. If you get disease states, do you know how that hurts your children? Hurts them to see you sick? Do you want to hurt your children? A good man makes good choices about his life, does not hurt animals for no reason. There is no nutritional requirement to eat any animal product. None. Not a single nutrient is required to come from animals. Not one. So the only reason we're eating animals is taste buds. Now, if it's harming animals, it's harming you, it's harming your family, it's harming the environment. What is masculine about that? That is not masculine. Masculine means being virile, being healthy, being there for your family, being there to protect the innocent. That's masculine. Let's get back to the true meaning of masculine and take pride in that and stand brave in that, regardless of what your peers think of you. Be the brave man in the group, the real man in the group, and stand up to criticism and jealousy and trolls on social media. That's masculine.
Plant strong masculinity.
Boom.
Maybe that's what Rip Esselstyn would call it. Plant strong masculinity.
Absolutely.
Do you feel that that it's changing? That toxic masculinity is on the wane, or is it still ascendant?
You know, Einstein, I believe, had a good quote that great minds have always faced fierce resistance from mediocre minds. And I think that there will be people who lead a movement who will be out in front and take the hits, take the accusations, and still keep going and be proud and stay in the truth. And it's their persistence that will move the movement forward. You know, who is it? One of the great women philosophers said that, you know, when she was said, "Oh, it's too small a number of people to make a change," and she said, "Do you realize that every great movement in this world has started out with one or a few people?"
Right.
And that's the power that you can be. Be the one to be brave and be there out there first, moving the movement forward, getting people healthy. This is a movement for everyone. Everyone wants to be healthier. Everyone doesn't want to suffer with disease states. No one wants that. When you can be the one out there hanging the flag for everyone, for a better environment, for less suffering to the animals, less suffering for your own family, less suffering for your own body, you know, that's something to be proud. That's something to be very proud of.
There's one difference, though, between our movement and other movements in the past that were on the side of the truth. Like, let's say, that the Earth revolves around the sun rather than the other way around. Well, Copernicus and Galileo had the luxury of time. We don't, because we're in a climate emergency. And so we need to prevail in this back and forth over what the human diet should be. We need to prevail as soon as possible. I think it's been over 110 degrees. How many days in a row in Phoenix now? 20 something days in a row. The planet is melting, and it is melting because people eat meat. That is the leading reason for our climate our climate emergency. When cows belch methane, there are 1.5 billion of them in the world, the methane molecules don't particularly care whether they came from a cow or from a gas pipeline. So we need to think of these cows as exhaust pipes. I I hope that doesn't seem unfair to the cows, but I mean, from a climate perspective, there are just too many cows on the planet. And these pig operations and chicken operations are destroying the waterways. We're destroying our own water, our own land, and the air. So we have this struggle for truth over the correct human diet, where all the science is on our side. But we also have this clicking clock that we need to prevail yesterday. We need to prevail as soon as possible and shut down animal agriculture.
Indeed. And so we basically will change. It's whether we do it willingly or whether the change is forced upon us. Yeah. Those are our two options. Change will happen. It may not be the change we want if we don't start acting upon it now. Having the oceans warm to the point where there's a mass die-off would be catastrophic for the Earth. The amount of oxygen could drop significantly to the point where there'd be a mass die-off of human beings as well. We're talking catastrophic results. We can change that, but we have to start acting now. And, you know, with the latest study showing 75% reduction in global greenhouse gases, simply by choosing to go vegan, there is nothing you could do better to contribute as a single person right now than change your diet to a plant-based diet or a plant-pure diet.
There's really nothing masculine about bringing on an apocalypse with your hamburgers. Geoff, thank you for joining us today. Folks, you could find Geoff's company at cleanmachineonline.com. And Geoff is a bodybuilding champion on the strength of plants. That's masculine. Geoff, thanks again.
Thank you, my friend.
This has been the Glenn Mercer Show, where everyone listening turns vegan, regains their health, and annoys their friends and relatives. Find us on YouTube at The Glenn Mercer Show and across all your major podcast platforms. Don't forget to subscribe.